Hey there, EB here on EB's weekly update. I know I say every week there's so much to talk about. There really is, and stuff now is happening like by the hour. And we'll start off obviously with the Iran bombing, but I actually have a list that okay, what's the most important thing that I want to start with every week? And after I get done the weekly update, I start with a clean slate. I start putting things down for the following week, and the number one spot just keeps getting pushed down, pushed down, pushed down till it's like number 12. I essentially get all my information from I read the Wall Street Journal every day. I read the Washington Post. I read New York Post, and I read the New York Times. Those are really in the state paper. I do watch local news, but mostly my news comes from either CNN and Fox News. I try to probably watch 60% CNN, 40% Fox News, just so I get the balance. And then whatever I hear along the way. Sports, obviously, I get from ESPN and what I watch. So that's kind of how I put it all together. I get, what I think would be interesting, and then I put it in a list, and the list just keeps getting changed over. So let's start with the bombing of Iran. I think it's the most consequential thing that has happened in this world in many, many years because of the weakness of Iran. They are now a paper tiger. Remember, Israel has decimated Hezbollah, Hamas. They bombed Iran last year, and there wasn't really a retaliation in kind. Iran is really on its heels, and it's a state-sponsored terrorist that funds a lot of the terrorist states throughout the Middle East. So when a rat's cornered, they do things desperately. Obviously, desperate times call for desperate measures. And Israel's surgical strikes that they did last night were akin to the Operation Spiderweb that Ukraine did a couple weeks ago when they took out 40% of the bomber capacity of the airplanes of Russia. An operation that obviously was in the planning for months and months and months. Information being transmitted from the inside of Iran to Israel. Drones being able to get inside of Iran through the assistance of Iranians and spies. Extraordinarily coordination. It's one of the most amazing things of intelligence and coordination I've ever seen. They bombed 7 nuclear facilities, including the generating facility of all the nuclear fuel. They've taken out 4 generals of the Revolutionary Guard, of the regular army, of the guard for the mullahs. They took out 2 nuclear scientists. And as a real kind of, a blow to the U.S., I guess you could say, they took out the lead negotiator who's been negotiating with the United States over a new nuclear deal. And just so you know, Barack Obama negotiated a nuclear deal, and then Israel pressured Trump in the first term in 2017 to break that nuclear agreement, which he did. Now he is trying to get the exact same terms that were agreed to before for some light civil nuclear development that obviously doesn't have bomb capacity. But this is a real turning point also between the United States and Israel because Trump did not want Israel to bomb Iran because of the instability it would cause in the Middle East. But they did it anyway. Now, they wouldn't have done it if Trump said, if you do it, our relationship is done. Obviously, they gave the United States advance notice because the United States pulled some personnel and troops out from those areas. Trump didn't tell them not to do it. Iran right now is on its heels, which is great, but it's a problem. What's going to happen is they're going to strike through proxies all throughout the world on synagogues and Jewish institutions, whether it's colleges, campuses, charitable foundations. I think there's going to be some response by the Houthis against Israel, but Israel said this is not going to be a one-day thing, that they are going to blow these factories into oblivion and set Iran back generation to be able to develop a nuclear weapon. I heard they were weeks away. It is extraordinary. 100 planes were sent into Iran, not one shot down. They used drones. They hit 7 facilities. Can you imagine the intel that they have on where these top generals and commanders are at any given time of the day, that they can pinpoint accuracy their drones and their missiles and rockets to take these guys out? On the one hand, as being Jewish and supporting Israel, I'm glad, but on the other hand, very, very nervous. This could lead to the next Middle East major war, depending on who sides up with Iran and goes against Israel. The United States ultimately is going to get dragged into it, whether they want to or not. Marco Rubio has said, do not shoot at United States. This was a unilateral action by Israel. Do not shoot at our ships or personnel. But that's a real problem. The United States will be dragged into it. And maybe they wanted Israel to do the bombing instead of the United States. Maybe that's what Trump wanted, because last week he said that Iran wasn't agreeing to something that they were going to agree to. They changed their mind, and then the Ayatollah came out and said, we'll never agree to just limiting any of our nuclear capacity, and certainly maybe not even for civil electrical use. So what you find, and what Trump is finding, is peace anywhere in the world is elusive. It's like grabbing air at times, and it's one of those things where you go get mercury and you just push it, and then mercury jumps into 3 different things. So now Ukraine has a real problem because Russia wants to respond in kind for Operation Spiderweb. Hamas and Israel are no further away from entering into any kind of peace agreement where they can stop bombing into Palestine and giving food and medical relief to all of the people who are in the Gaza Strip, not Palestine, the Gaza Strip. And now you have Iran, and he was trying to do a nuclear deal with Iran. He was trying to do a deal with Russia. He's basically being told, yes, you're the most important person in the world, but we have our own interests, and despite all your rhetoric or what you're going to say, we're not going to do anything about it. And the truth of the matter is, Trump and a lot of the MAGA Republicans in Congress and in the Senate don't want wars, don't want conflict where the United States doesn't have a direct interest involved, which is unusual, because there is soft power that we have to show. So let's keep a close watch on this Iran-Israel thing. It's fascinating. Last Friday, after I got done the weekly update, the United States Supreme Court said that DOJ can access American citizens' financial information and Social Security information, reversing all the appellate courts that said they could not. And that's really scary to me, because we have these DOJ investigators who have never been given clearance, and their backgrounds haven't been checked, they're not vetted, they don't have top security clearance, and they are now getting everybody's personal, financial, and Social Security information. And these DOJ people on their regular jobs are in the business of selling this kind of information. So let's not forget that that's going on. See, what happens is so much is going on at the same time that you really can't keep up with it, and that you can't stay on top of it. Call your congressman, congresswoman, and complain, or really understand the issues. We had the Indian plane crash yesterday. It was as sad can be. One, it's again bad for Boeing. It's their big Dreamliner. Looked like it took off and just completely lost altitude before it could get thrust. The engines are super powerful, so the landing gear wasn't going up. The wings didn't look like they were fully engaged. all the fuel is in, full fuel for the plane is in the wings. And the plane went down and unfortunately crashed into a medical student hostile. And 24 people were killed on the ground, 240 in the plane, except the guy that was sitting in 11A, which is just the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen. I mean, the plane blew up with a fireball as big as like a bomb, and the guy walks away. I mean, it's fate, it's a miracle, but it's really sad. This is not going to be good for Boeing. It's the biggest air disaster in the last 10 years. Yesterday, we also had the incident in California, and we'll talk about what's going on. Let's talk first in California. The protests in California started last week, earlier this week and late last week, where people were protesting the rounding up by ICE of just normal undocumented aliens who are working, whether they're in restaurants or on construction sites or on farms, picking fruits and vegetables. Remember when Trump became president, he said the focus is going to be on getting rid of all the criminal illegal aliens in our country. And there wasn't as many as he had indicated. Remember, he said there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands. Well, they have deported probably about 6,000 of them, and good riddance to these scumbags. But now they then moved to the university students, where they were going to deport university students that were, promulgating propaganda of the Gazans, the Hamas, and the Palestinians, and other things against Ukraine and different things of that nature. And now they're just moving to ordinary people, people that we see every day in our lives. And I sent out a tweet the other day, and it generated a lot of response. I wasn't meaning to be political, and essentially this is what it said. I've been practicing law for 37 years. I'm 63 years. I'm going to be 63 years old next month. And I've had the pleasure over the 37 years of being a lawyer of representing a lot of Mexican restaurant owners, a lot of Mexican general contractors or subcontractors, and Mexican businesses. And I can tell you, and I'm not comparing them to other ethnic backgrounds, but they are the hardest working people I have ever seen. They work sometimes 7 days a week, 12 to 16 hours a day. I said that my neighbor's doing a major renovation on their home, and some of the Mexican or South American employees are there from 6 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. Every restaurant you go into, whether it's in the kitchen or waitresses, you're being waited on, or your food's being cooked by Mexicans, Latins, or South Americans. And they do a really good job. And if we get rid of these people and their children who are in our schools and in universities and born in our country here and been here for 15, 20 years, who is going to do these jobs? Do we really think all of the whites like me and African Americans and Asians and Indians, are they going to want to do all those hardcore jobs that make our jobs easier? In fact, it got so kind of sticky and uncomfortable that a lot of these restaurant trade and hotel associations have notified Trump and said our industries are hurting. And remember, Trump's in the hotel industry, the hospitality industry, and he says, maybe we've gone too far. He says our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure businesses have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good long-time workers away from them, with those jobs being almost impossible to replace. And Trump said, stay tuned, we're going to make some modifications. So even the President of the United States knows we can't get rid of all of these people. And I know people responded and said, wholesale, get rid of every single one of them. It would dramatically affect our lives to the point that I think many industries would shut down. So that's why about 10 years ago, the Gang of Six of Marco Rubio, Lindsey Graham, a whole bunch of others, about Gang of Eight, got together and gave a path for these undocumented aliens to get citizenship after about 6 to 8 years of living a law-abiding life, working, paying their taxes, getting proper identification, and then they would have a path to citizenship, because that would enable our industries not to be affected. But everybody just wants to pick these people up. So in California, you started having these protests, and I'm all for the First Amendment, protesting the right of assembly, free speech. What I am not about, is destruction of property, looting, graffiti, blocking highways, blocking people from going into a building, blocking people from getting home to and from work and to their appointments. That is called breaking the law. That is called breaching of the peace. That is meaning you should be arrested. I don't know how much of it is going on. I don't fault President Trump at all for calling up the National Guard. I don't like the calling up of Marines. It's the violation of the Posse Comitatus law of the 1800s. We've never done that. The only time that the federal government has called up the National Guard, believe it or not, is in the early 1900s, when there was a U.S. postal strike and they had the National Guard delivering mail. I worry about the flashpoint. I remember Kent State during the Vietnam War. Not remember it, but I studied it, where the protests got a little unruly and then they started shooting and people got killed. I worry about that. I like that the Karen Bass, the mayor of California, did put a curfew in place. This obviously is transmuting to other cities: New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, none in Washington yet. So this is going to be a flashpoint, but I just want us to be consistent. So when people are protesting against President Trump, he will send in National Guard and the Marines, and he will arrest people, as he should. But if people are protesting for President Trump, there will be no National Guard, there will be no Marines. In fact, you will get a pardon even if you're convicted and you plead guilty of those criminal charges. So let's treat the January 6 people from the same spoon. Let's feed them from the same spoon that we're going to feed these people and all around the country who are attacking police officers, spitting on them, throwing bottles, throwing rocks at cars, doing all that. They're scumbags, all of them. The ones that support President Trump and do these kind of acts are scumbags. The ones that don't support President Trump and violate people's rights and destroy public property and loot are scumbags. Make them all drink from the same cup of justice. So yesterday, the United States Senator Padilla from California, we have 100 senators, 2 from California, Adam Schiff and him. He's the first Latin American senator from California, went into a press conference that was being conducted by Kristi Noem, clearly interrupted her while she was speaking, but that's no reason to be forcibly removed from the conference, taken out into the hallway, thrown on the ground and arrested. That kind of stuff we don't do to our elected officials. That's just speech that was impolite, obviously, if he interrupted her. But at the same time, she said he didn't identify himself as a U.S. Senator. Oh, sure he did. He was wearing a U.S. Senate shirt. He had an FBI with him, and he had a security guard with him. And he said, I am United States Senator Padilla, Senator Padilla from California. So I was disappointed in the way that the Republicans and Mike Johnson said that he had it coming to him. This gives free license to just beat the hell out of any politician you agree with. But again, when I made these posts about him, how hard Mexicans work, I was labeled, so liberal, disgusting. I want these people, everybody wants them out. And then lo and behold, Trump's saying, I don't think we're going to take away everybody from the construction industry. I don't think we're going to take away everybody from the hospitality industry. I don't think we're going to take away all these restaurant workers. So that's the next thing. In South Carolina, we have a Republican, the leader of the Conservative Freedom Caucus in our state house, from Lexington, where I live and where my office is, right here where I'm doing this. is a conservative Republican. His name is R.J. May, who ran on family values, married, 2 kids, under 10 years old. The guy just got arrested, denied bond on federal charges of distributing at least 10 videos of child sex abuse. The legal filing accuses R.J. May of distributing 220 different videos and 479 times over 5 days in early 2024 of baby rape of little girls. That I couldn't get through page 7 of the government's brief of 22 of why he shouldn't get bond. It is so disgusting of the videos that he looks at and he distributes to other people. It is unbelievable. He has different names called Joe Biden with 3 N's and 69. He has all these other names. Now his defense is somebody hacked into my account in my house and did all this, except it wasn't put on his wife's phone. It's on his phone. This guy is so disgusting that I hope they hang him by his fingernails. He went to one of the, I think, South American countries or another country, and the Homeland Security knows he was having underage sex with underage girls in these videos that are like 4 years old, that are getting their genitalia violated. They're doing things with animals. I'm telling you, man, if there ever was a guy that should be strung up by his fingernails, it's this guy. And I'm so glad that Judge Hodges did not give him bond. So, look, what do we have here? Trump announced earlier this week, a couple days ago, that there's a framework. This is what the negotiator said. There's now a framework with China that we're going to negotiate a trade deal. But then all of a sudden, Trump puts out on his Truth Social account, trade deal done with China. Done. We're going to tariff their goods 55%. They're going to tariff our goods 10%. Where did that come from? There's no such thing as that. Nobody's even talking about it. Why does he put this out? It's just not true. It hasn't been there's nothing signed. There's nothing that confirms that. Jamie Dimon, who is one of the most respected financial analysts in the world, and along with Bob Ackerman, Jamie Dimon, the head of J.P. Morgan Chase, said he's issued a stark warning for our economy. There's real chance that these numbers will deteriorate and deteriorate soon. The low unemployment, inflation has ticked up a little bit. The stimulus, he said, that came from all the COVID policies and money that we dumped into the economy and sent to people has now worn out. And the money that the infrastructure bill that bill that Biden put in place with both Republicans and Democrats, that was bipartisan, those bills are wearing off. Now we're also seeing Elon Musk backing up the truck. He is now sending out signals and talking to people in the administration. He said, I said too much last week. I shouldn't have said what I said. You're damn right you shouldn't have. You can't screw with the most powerful man in the world. You can't win, especially when all your companies rely on subsidies from the United States government. If I was Trump, I wouldn't let him back in the fold, but he needs him because Musk is going to keep pumping money into Republican candidates. It was interesting. Trump said, if I see you spend one dime on a Democratic candidate, I will pull all your subsidies. So Elon Musk was humbled. That shows you how erratic he is, and he's running a company for shareholders. The guy has extremely poor judgment. It supposedly came out that he takes ketamine and he smoked dope on a podcast. A problem. These protests are taking aim at not having ICE round up people who've been in our country for decades, and I think it's a problem. We're going to have to really look at this. You know, Trump is spending 140 million so far on the deployment of the Marines and the National Guard in California. That if this happens in every state, think about the money. He's spending 45 million tomorrow on his birthday parade, even though it's for the anniversary of the Army. I've already told you he's not doing that for the Marines and the Navy, which their anniversary is 250 years, is in September and November. There's many senators that and politicians that are boycotting the parade tomorrow. There was a picnic yesterday at the White House, and he didn't invite Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky. Rand Paul is basically an independent kind of constitutionalist kind of guy. He's quirky, no question about it. But he has big problems with the big, beautiful bill and said he is not passing it because of all of the spending that's taking place and what's going to happen to the national debt. This is how Trump responded. He disinvited him as the only senator, and Rand Paul was going to bring his grandchildren to the picnic, and disinvited him. And Rand Paul said that this is childish behavior, it's immature, and I disagree with Trump on an intellectual level, but I voted for him over 95% of the time on his bills. This is where we're moving as a country. I saw that Sally Ride, I don't know if you remember, I remember being in my first year of law school, and I was walking through the lobby, and you know, that's when the Challenger, Space Challenger, went up and blew up when it was being launched, you know, right before it hit into the atmosphere, and it was just horrific. You know, we had Ronald McNair from South Carolina and some other people, and they all perished. Evidently, Sally Ride was gay, and she kept it quiet. She didn't want to set back women in the astronauts and women in other important positions. Her partner, her life partner, finally came out and is writing a book or gave an interview and talked about that. And no sooner did I see that than yesterday on one of the morning TV shows, they interviewed the only elected transgender member of Congress from Delaware. Her name is Sarah McBride. And, you know, I have feelings about transgender athletes that I've already voiced, that I don't agree that they should compete, men turning into women and competing in women's sports. I am not against transgender. They should be able to compete. They may have to have their own league, or they compete against men, and they certainly have their rights. But I had this preconceived notion of this Sarah McBride that, you know, she was going to go in and champion all of these LGBT issues and everything. And if you listen to her speak, all she talks about is, I am here for my Delaware citizens who elected me, all citizens, not just those that voted for me. And I'm keen on what's best for Delaware, what's best for my constituency. She was one of the most measured politicians I've ever heard. Don't forget, Delaware is not New York City. It's businesses that always incorporate there. She was elected not just by gays, not by trannies. She was elected by the young, the old, the religious, the conservatives. She got elected, and she is governing the way that it should. Her whole temperament and demeanor is measured. It's hard to really hate her when you see her up close. You know, you want to hate that kind of thing. You think it's out of the ordinary, and you want to come in with a bad attitude. But she said those words, after you hear me speak and you watch me in action and you see how I get along with my colleagues, it's hard to hate me up close. And that is really a beautiful, beautiful lesson to be learned, that we do hate afar, but it's really hard when you get close to hate somebody up close. Let me say this once and for all. The Democrats have committed political malpractice in turning their backs and their heads away from the immigration problems that we've had in our country over the last 10 or 15 years. Biden had an open border, there's no question about it. 68% of our country is concerned by the illegal immigrants in our country and what is happening and how many are coming in and whether they're being vetted and do they have criminal background, medical background, mental background, whether they are drugs. I think if the Democrats are ever to get back into being a serious party and being considered to be serious, they are going to have to tackle the immigration issue. It's one thing that Trump is doing. Yes, he may be going a little far, but it's better than doing nothing. And I think if the Democrats are going to be taken seriously, the first thing they got to do is join the Republicans and figure out a way to control illegal immigration. All this stuff that's going on, whether it's Israel, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's California, has taken the focus off the big, beautiful bill that is going to be passed by the Senate. Yes, the Senate will change a lot of things. They're not going to include no taxation of tips for overtime and some other stuff, and they're not going to let as much of the Medicaid and the Medicare cuts. But there is going to be an explosion of debt. There is going to be tax breaks for the extremely wealthy. So let's kind of keep our eye on the ball all the way around, not just on the flavor of the day, but there's 6 or 7 or 8 different balls in the air. So Sebastian Gore, head of the White House personnel, is the one who started the feud with Elon Musk. That's how it started. So he's the personnel director for the White House. And Elon Musk put up a guy named Isaacson, I think, for head of NASA. And the guys cut his appointment, Sebastian Gore. And that's why Musk left the Oval Office short of his 120 days. That's what started the feud. The Stephen Miller, who is deputy chief of staff and head of a lot of the political ideas that Trump comes up with in these executive orders, he took a massive hit by a newscaster, Mullen, from ABC News this week. He's the one who interviewed Trump. He said that Stephen Miller eats hate and spits hate. It was just a full-out execution of Stephen Miller, who really is a dark character. When you hear this guy speak, I mean, he gives you the willies. But as a news person, a journalist, you got to be objective. It was the wrong thing to do. It fed into the MAGA narrative, and he was rightfully fired. Some strange thing also happened this week, and that is Tulsi Gabbard did a 3-minute video on nuclear war. I don't know if this was run by Trump, but she says we're on the cusp of nuclear war. Don't punish Russia, she said, because Russia will launch the bomb. There's always these things that the senators even said that she's too close to Putin. It was the strangest thing. And Senator, who's a Republican, John Kennedy from Louisiana, said she must need to change her meds because they're not working. He said aside from her fascination with the Kremlin, it's just plain weird. Kilmar Abrego, the face of deportation, was brought back in the United States, and he was charged with human trafficking thousands of people. So again, he will face deportation. The problem is, the United States is pulling back, and isolationism is okay, but it's going to leave a gap or a void for somebody like China or a bigger country to come in and do all this soft power by giving aid to the poor. And China now is doing that in South America. They're giving aid to the poor and the destitute. They're doing it in Asia. And what could happen is China can supplant the United States to do that. 113 House Democrats voted against the GOP resolution denouncing the anti-Semitic terrorist attack in Colorado. That's what we're down to. That's why the Democrats are out of power, because they're so goddamn excuse my language, damn out of touch. Let's talk about Nancy Mace. Everybody knows I'm suing Nancy Mace on behalf of my client Brian Musgrave. He was one of the 4 people that she accused in January. Started with a speech that she released before she got on the House floor, and on the House floor she called Brian Musgrave, who just owns a house with her ex-fiance, an apartment, that has a camera on top of a refrigerator, not in a plant, not in an air conditioning vent, a big Amazon white camera like we all have for our dogs and kids. She called him on the house floor a predator, a human trafficker, and a rapist. And then afterwards, she's done it numerous times outside. So I have sued her. And I asked her to take it down or we're going to lawyer up. Well, yesterday, her name was associated. You want to talk about rich, you want to talk about karma. Her name was associated with sexually harassing a Boston University female soccer player. It's insane. It wasn't her. It was like Nancy. Shouldn't have said Nancy Mace. Maybe it should have said Nancy Mock or something like that. And she said, my name was falsely accused. You know, you've accused me of doing this and I didn't do this. She said, take it down, print a retraction, or I'm going to lawyer up. Well, that's what we said to her. And she didn't do it. So, you know, karma's a bitch. Life, the road of life is a circle. It's not a straight line. It always comes back to bite you in the ass. On the Blake Lively Baldini case, he had all of his counterclaims dismissed for $450 million, but he has until June 23rd to replead. So he's going to have to get more specific in the defamation, or Blake Lively's only going to have a claim against him. Guys, you must see St. Elmo on Max. Robert De Niro, guy's like 83 years old. He plays Frank Costello, and he plays Vito Genovese in the movie, and at the same time. And they show him talking to each other. The acting that he does in his 80s is incredible. It's such a good movie. Please watch it. Sly and the Family Stone died. He was the front man for that band. They played in Woodstock. He was 82 years old. The Karen Reed thing, I don't know what to make of this girl anymore. She's starting to make faces at people. She's starting to laugh at smirky grins and gory photos of her dead cop boyfriend in court. She's grinning maniacally. Something is not right with this woman. Mikey Sherrill, she won the Democratic, highly contested with a number of candidates, field for the Democratic primary for governor in New Jersey. She is a superstar. CIA, she was a fighter pilot for 10 years. These type of women, Mikey Sherrill and Elise Slotkin, who's the new senator, I think either from Michigan or Minnesota, these are the kind of women that the Democratic Party needs as leaders. Not men, these women who serve in the military, who've been in the intelligence community, work for the FBI, CIA. She is a stud. We got to watch that race that she's in with Cucciarella, who's a Trump candidate in New Jersey. 800,000 voters voted for her in a non-presidential election. That's how much people are starting to take notice of why voting is important. In the Sean Puffy Combs trial, her ex-girlfriend called him a cuck, and a C-U-C-K, not the other word, and said he's bi-curious. He watches constantly women have sex with escorts. Guy's got real issues, folks. Coco Gauff beat Azarenka in the French Open, which was amazing. She lost the first set and she won the last two. But the match between Alcaraz and Sinner was one of the greatest tennis matches I've ever seen in my life. 5.5 hours. Alcaraz lost the first two sets. They won the last 8 majors, these two guys. Now, are they going to be Federer? Are they going to be Nadal? Are they going to be Djokovic? Don't know. But Sinner beat Djokovic at the French Open. They have taken tennis to another level. Now, look, in the 80s, tennis was much more popular with Borg and McEnroe and Vitas Gerulaitis and Yannick Noah and all those over Goff. But now Goff has overtaken tennis. These two guys have taken tennis to a level I've never seen. On the run, they hit not only survivable shots that go in, but they hit hard winning shots. The level of their skill and expertise is like nothing I've ever seen before. Brian Wilson, the founder of the Beach Boys, died at 82 this week. So many great songs: Surfing Safari, California, California Girls, Good Vibrations. He had a lot of mental illness issues. There were years and years and years where he wouldn't leave his house, did a lot of drugs, said the worst thing he did was LSD. Bob Dylan said his musical years should be donated to the Smithsonian, that he's that technically good. Paul McCartney said you cannot be a musician and not understand and listen to the Beach Boys. In fact, John Stamos, the good-looking guy that was on, I guess, Full House, and he actually toured with the Beach Boys as a drummer, believe it or not. So I found that interesting. The Sox have called up Roman Anthony. He is Red Sox. This kid's going to be that good. He's 21 years old. Aaron Judge hit a 469-foot home run this week. He's got 24 home runs. He's batting .396 for New York. Do you know what it's like to play in New York, the pressure cooker, with that press? It's crazy. And finally, Ric Flair, who's my friend and a former client, is experiencing his second bout with skin cancer at 76 years old, and it's pretty serious. So let's say a prayer for Rick. Here's our weekly questions. What criminal charges are typically brought under federal and state law against individuals who attack law enforcement during protests? And what are the consequences of pardoning them post-conviction? Well, we saw it on January 6th. These people were prosecuted. They went through jury trials. They were convicted or they pled guilty. But because they were protesting or doing this in the name of Donald Trump, he pardoned them or gave some clemency. You could be charged with assaulting a police officer, starting a riot, mayhem, interfering with a public display. There's a whole bunch of different things. Does selective prosecution based on political affiliation violate the Equal Protection Clause or prosecution ethics? Prosecution ethics, yes. No, if you violate a law, you can't, your defense isn't, well, they don't prosecute it against the people that live on this side of Lexington County, they only do it on this side. Now, it'll piss off a judge and it'll piss off the public, but violation of the law is a violation of the law, and you don't get to say, well, they don't enforce it against men, they only enforce it against women. Where is the legal line between protected protest and unlawful assembly or domestic terrorism? It is like the old Brandenburg case. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You should be able to protest if you get a permit, and you can do it in a safe manner, not to interfere with the public's use of the roads or the public buildings, or placing people in physical jeopardy. You cannot you cannot taunt. You protest. You can protest with signs. You can't breach the peace. And it's kind of like pornography. Hard for me to define it. I know it when I see it. Well, protests that are lawful and protests are unlawful when you see it. So that's kind of that. At what point does graffiti or blocking public infrastructure become a federal crime? It happens when you see it, when they deface a public building or they block a road. It prevents people from going home. They usually are arrested, released on their own recognizance, and then they pay a fine. Unless it is tremendous property damage or it causes somebody to get in a wreck. Protests between criminal conduct and lawful protests with the First Amendment is exactly what I said. Does it constitute a breach of the peace? Does it place property and life in danger? Immigration law. What legal responsibilities do contractors and homeowners have when employing undocumented workers, whether knowingly or not? When we hire people to come into our house, we don't have to give an I-9 test to give them, show us your papers, show us your legal status, show us your identification. But a contractor who hires people, he has to do that. An employer who hires people have to have I-9, have to have your driver's license, your birth certificate, your social security card, something that would show you're lawfully in the United States. We can't hire undocumented people to be our housekeepers and pay them under the table. That violates the law. So that's kind of what governs us. But we hire painters all the time that we suspect are using workers or they themselves are not documented. Does targeting non-criminal undocumented immigrants for mass detention raise constitutional or due process concerns? Absolutely. You are entitled to due process. Remember, it's a civil crime, civil mistake, not a crime to be in this country illegally. Unless you're committing a crime, then it becomes criminal. So they are entitled to due process, whether it's due process the same amount than citizens are, but they are entitled to due process, and then it's not 10 minutes of due process. The Diddy trial, we talked about. The Karen Reed trial, we talked about. Trump-Elon feud, we talked about that Elon cannot win that feud. How much legal weight do public statements by high-profile figures like Trump or Musk carry when they potentially influence government contracts? They absolutely do. Trump does have the right to terminate some contracts, and certainly people, the House and the Senate and Congress, have a right to review contracts. So when an attorney speaks publicly about race, crime, or immigration, what professional conduct rules apply, and how can they ensure integrity when exercising free speech? So what does that mean? It means that you're a lawyer 24 hours a day, not just 9 to 6. And there's many law students who've gotten through law school, but you have to pass what's known as character and fitness to say that you're fit to practice law. And people who have marched on behalf of the Klan or white supremacy issues have had their law licenses denied even though they've passed the bar exam. So we have to comport ourselves in a way that doesn't bring disrepute on the professional law or we violate crimes. Today, Casey Odell says, and I love Casey, completely agree with you, EB, regarding the Hispanic workforce and just how hard working people they are as a whole. I come from a family of farmers, and we've always had amazing hardworking people from the Hispanic community. Casey also said, interesting tidbit about Brian Wilson's brother Dennis. Dennis got wrapped up a little with Charles Manson. Very interesting backstory. Yes, a couple of his brothers played in the band, and Mike Love, who was a cousin. Sonny Fincher said, play stupid games and you win stupid prizes. I love that. So everybody, thank you very much for listening. Sorry it was so long, 47 minutes. Wow, could go on forever. Have a great weekend. EB out.